everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for another program. As I may remind you that last week we finished our first season. Today we're having what we would like to call it a second season, mainly because we are changing now the main subject that we are addressing every week. In this second season, we will be talking and sharing with you. And let me put the screen off because you're already seeing what we are going to be sharing today. We will be sharing with you the most famous arias of the opera repertory. And as you may have realized, based on the title of this program, we are opening the most famous arias uh, with not an aria but duets. Just to demonstrate how much we can adhere
No,
to
it is our program, so we
so
can
yeah.
handle it.
Uh,
Wish.
you may have realized if a tenor or a soprano can cut pieces of their areas, why wouldn't we add duets instead of arias, right? And of course, we are opening with the multi-famous, known by almost everybody, sung at some point in individual pieces or duets, or fortunate many singers have sung the complete opera. Of course, we are talking of La Traviata. And before I say anything else, because you have already noticed that I can keep speaking, keep speaking for hours, let me have Katia share with us before we jump into the first number. Share with us what is it that comes to her mind when she thinks of La Traviata. She has already shared with us in the past that she one of the first things she tried to sing when she was very little, a young girl, it was in fact La Traviata. But what else comes to your mind when you think of this hyper famous, most represented opera in the world?
Well, you stole my words, and I hate you because of that. Yeah, it's one of the most represented and performed operas in all the world since 1853, the year it was premiered. And I have to say that for me, it is a very special opera for the reason that you just mentioned. But I think that is uh, full of beautiful music. I have to confess that some operas are like music boring, boring, interesting. Oh, a lovely aria, a lovely duet, boring music. But I think that Verdi wrote uh, beautiful music for for every single piece of this puzzle named La Traviata.
And before, really this time, before we jump into the first duet that we would like to share with you, there is one thing that I would like to mention every time I recall some of the opera titles, and it is the case of La Traviata. Some of you may be aware that La Traviata in Italian, of course, means something, some sort. In English, I'm not sure of the translation. In Spanish, it is La Extraviada, but La Extraviada in Spanish doesn't really mean anything. So I was telling you that I would like to remind everybody that now we are recording in the year 2022, and despite being over 150 years after the composition of this opera, people are still afraid of calling La Traviata Violetta Valery, as you may know, the name of the character, are afraid of calling her for what she is. And forgive me if you have chaste ears, but La Traviata, what actually means is that she was a prostitute, a high-end prostitute, if you wish, who would deal with who would be part of the or have as customers as clients la bourgeoisie of those years in Paris, but in fact that's what she does. And the interesting part here, I will not give a full detail of La Traviata, but I think it is important because that's how it actually opens. It does not tell us the story of a woman who falls in love with so many people, of which is inferred in the first act and throughout the whole opera. But the whole opera is about a woman who at the end deserves to find the true love. And that true love is Alfredo. That for some tenors like to sing it, it is not a very complex character for a tenor. I mean, Verdi puts everything into Violetta's role. So she's the one who changes and who suffers throughout the whole opera. But before we jump into that suffering, let's go now. And I am putting on the screen the score sheet of the hyper famous Libiam lieti calici, which I was telling Katia in Spanish that nobody speaks that. No, nobody even translated into Spanish. Nobody speaks like that.
Yeah, thanks God.
Yeah, maybe the best way to translate it is let's just get drunk.
I mean, they're having a party, so it's like pretty logical. Let's drink and let's cheers for anything, any reason.
And it is also said that Violetta Valeri's La Traviata's Paris were very famous in the Paris of those days. People would spend the whole night there. So just imagine how interesting those Paris used to be, which you see later on another act. I am not going to tell you anything else. But let's go back to that. So we are in the middle of a party. Of course, Violetta is there. Alfredo is there, so he has the opportunity of approaching to the woman she saw and fully fell in love for her. You know, operas, the tenor always falls in love for the soprano. Well, nobody's perfect, you know. That's the way it is. But it is very interesting because in this act, La Traviata or Violetta Valery is seeing what she does every day. She's with someone, she's having a party at her home with many guests, happens to run into this very young guy that somehow touches her heart. This duet, Libiam lieti calici. So let's drink from uh, this is not a glass of water, a glass of wine. We are not specified what kind of wine. Maybe we don't want to know. But uh, you may be very familiar with introductory notes because when people listen to it in the concerts, they immediately go like, ah! Or if it is the opera, as soon as they listen to the first notes of this introduction, which, by the way, we improvised a couple of programs in the past, which was very funny, not very good in artistic result, but we enjoyed it, and in fact, that's what this duet is inviting us to have: fun, fun, fun. And so, as I will start to play in the background, just the intro, this melody. Uh, what are your first thoughts around this brindisi de la Traviata?
I'm afraid that I can't follow your sound because you are pretty far away from here and it's delayed.
Yeah,
It will happen.
I'm not singing. I'm just putting it in the background as you speak.
Oh, great.
Much better, right?
Yeah, okay.
So as I was just saying, as you know, this melody makes you also like wanna dance. Da 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 da. Ta-da-dun, ta-da-da-da-dun, ta-da-da-da-da-dun, ta-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dun, ta-da-dun, ta-da-da-dun, ta-da-da-dun. So even if you realized, I didn't have the impostation in the voice, and just with a natural spoken voice, you can have the melody. But let's take a look at the lyrics. It says, so I would like to call. I will not give much details of, or I would say technical details on the score, because I know that many people who are watching us are not familiar with reading music. So I will try to keep it as simple as I can. If you have already noticed, there is a small expression here that says con grazia, and then it says leggerissimo, which means that this part has to be sung graciously, not with all the voice, but leggero and with grazia, and that makes complete sense. I mean, you're in the middle of a party, so you will not be singing it as you are deep serious. Even if you are in love with her, you may even take the chance of using your own glass of wine to maybe go and flirt with Violetta, right? That's what you usually see on the stage. So you go like Libiam, oh Libiam, oh lietica, lici che la bellezza infiora. By the way, those that small passage is usually something the tenor usually messes up with. In the interest of pursuing volume, so the small notes over there, the chacaturas and all those things there are usually omitted, but people really doesn't care. People are just expecting to have fun with that duet. So who cares if the tenor sang all the notes, or if he omitted half of them? Truth is, nobody really cares, right? Then he goes for che infiora e la foggevolo racine mia voluta. I would tell you that even though we could translate the whole content of or the lyrics of the duet, I think it is not necessary, because the duet, from my perspective, is just an excuse to have fun. It's just a way to settle the environment. There is no actual content that really needs to be translated, because it will have meaning later on the opera. So I think that the best thing to do it is just to go for the words, go for the melody, and enjoy it, unless Katia thinks differently. You agree with those thoughts of mine?
I agree. I think that the most important part of this piece of music, of this duet, it is the music. I think that the music speaks for itself. So we use the text, and it has a function, of course, but we are just introducing Alfredo, Violetta, the love that Alfredo feels for her, and they're having fun. So I don't think that there is not a bigger complication in this sense.
I like the word. There is not a big complication in here. So he goes like, Libiam, nei dolci fremiti che suscita l'amore. Here I would like to mention something. So even though we said do not pay too much attention to the words, this expression here really just give us a small hint when he says Libiane dolci fremiti che suscita l'amore, meaning that he somehow, or that drinking somehow makes you easier to find love. Many people can tell you stories of the night they went out with friends and fell in love with someone, which at a later date you would call them, no, you were just drunk. That was no actual love, you were drunk. So
But it's not the case in this point, because I have to mention that Alfredo has been taking care for Violetta the last year. She's been sick, and he's been asking how is she going. So it's not that drunk.
and you just spoiled the story, because I was about to say that, and now I will spoil the complete story because it is true.
Elaborate.
For Violetta, at least at this point, he's just a guy, another guy who falls in love for her. But for Alfredo, it is very different. As Katia just mentioned, he cared for her from the very first time he saw her. So he's been in love, this suffering of love throughout the whole year, and this is the final time he has a chance of meeting her. So at the beginning, at least in this duet, it is not balanced. Alfredo is very, very interested in her, and for Violetta, Alfredo is just somebody else. Things are about to change, but let's not share that still. So, this is expression che suscita l'amore, poiché quell'occhio al cuore onnipotente va. And here is where he ends his first part. Libiam, amore, amor, fra I calici più calici avrà. And here is where the very, 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 very famous choir starts. Libia, la 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 la. And this is the part where people in the choir usually clap, right? They are usually like ta da 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 da. Of course, much nicer than I just did. But that after the first intervention of the tenor, then comes the choir, people clapping usually, and then comes la soprano, and with an expression on the score sheet that says salsa. You can start showing us what comes with your part.
Sure, sure. Tra voi saprò vivere il tempo mio giocondo. Tutto è follia, follia nel mondo, ciò che non è piacer. Godiamo sempre il gaudio dell'amore, e un fior che non ci muore, e più si può goder. Godiam, cembetta, fermi, facendo lusinghier.
Then the chorus again. Godiamo la tazza, il cantico, la notte bella il viso. In questo paradiso ne scopra il nuovo di. Con
La
grazia.
vita che ripudio,
Quando non sai ancora
non dite che l'ignora.
il mio destin così. Odiamo la tazza, il cantico, la novea bella, il riso.
Riso
In
in quel
questo paradiso ne scopro il nuovo di. And of course, people are waiting for this final part of the duet for the two voices to go for a high note. And right after that, usually the public goes mad, insanely mad and clapping. Ah! We need to confess, or we need to share that in fact it is not a difficult duet, at least from a technical perspective of difficulty in high notes, elaborations, ornaments, or passages in the voice. Unless you tell me differently, at least for the tenor, it is not a difficult part to sing.
a piece of cake.
One can sing it even if one is sick, Because if you don't feel like singing it, you can always have people to join you and clap while you are resting. So most of the times you
Yeah,
can easily get away with it.
yeah. It is a pretty kind duet.
Yeah, you know that if you are adding it to your concert or recital or whatever, for sure people will clap. We know that. And as I
It
was,
is popular, it is melodic, it is famous, so it has everything to win.
yeah, that's one of the numbers, just as O mio babino caro, where you know that you will sing it and you will get away with it.
Yeah, Cuando me envo.
Quando me vo, yeah, people want to listen to Quando me vo as well, or many of the others that we will bring to this cycle. And let me just share a couple of final thoughts on this duet. As you may have realized, the two of them just having fun. No more things to explain, but I was telling you that this is the first act where Violetta is singing all the time. Well, she keeps singing high notes throughout because you know sopranos can't help it. They need to sing high notes all the time. But this is the only act where she's actually happy. Things will go to hell in the following acts. But yeah, because if you look at the libretto, the libretto is very cruel. After
Yeah.
this, well, of course, you wrap up with the sempre libera, where you show off that you can have your high note there, and if you're a soprano and you don't sing it, people feel like they shouldn't have paid for the ticket. So even if
That's
it is
right.
not written, people are expecting that note. So
It's already part of it.
yeah, so and that's the last happy moment that the soprano has on stage. We are not giving many more details because this is not a program on La Traviata. I'm just sharing this because you will see how we are jumping from a very happy duet, and as we're landing now in the third act, there is another duet that is not as famous as the Libiam, but it also has its place there. And if you ask me, in fact, if I had to choose between the two, I would choose Parigi or Cara. What about you?
Oh, I don't know, but if we think only about the emotional sense, the content, and the drama, of course, that Party Okada has to win, because like we were talking about Libiamo, it is about having fun. If we analyze what Violetta is singing about, I'm gonna share my happy time and my happy life with all of you, and I'm not worried about anything. And I have it all. I have money. I'm beautiful. I'm famous. Well, she's a prostitute, but she's not very worried about.
Yeah, to be sincere, yeah.
Yeah, but in this point, she finally. Oh, I hope I'm not making a spoiler again, but she's finally meeting again with the love of her life, and she's about to something. So it hurts. It hurts to sing it, at least for me.
Yeah, the emotional commitment for Parigi or Cara, if you, and the reason why we are mentioning when they happen throughout the whole opera is because something that singers have done is that when they choose the numbers for the recitals, it for the audience, if they are not familiar with operas they are part to, they just think that they are like pieces, like at this point I'm happy, at this point I'm sad, at this point I'm brave, at this point I'm afraid. But there's an evolution of the character, and this is what we are talking about. We have the evolution of we have had Violetta happy, famous, with money, young, beautiful, everything. And now that we are landing on the third act, she's not old, because in fact, I can spoil it now. She's about to die, and she will die very young. But before this duet, she has already confronted that all her beauty is gone. If you're familiar with that aria, it is Addio del Passato, in where she says bye to the past, and she recalls, she remembers everything she has lost, and one of the things she has lost is Alfredo. We jumped from the first to the third, and it is in the second where they were happy, at least for the very first 2 minutes, because right after that, everything starts to go wrong. But at least we had the chance of hearing that Violetta could be happy. No longer she is, now she's sick, she's lonely. Alfredo left her. Of course, she made him leave her on the agreement of with Mr. Giorgio Germont. That's complicated. We are not explaining, but at this point in time, she's been alone, knowing that she's about to die, and suddenly,
She lost her fortune
yeah, she lost
trying
her.
to get to recover her health.
So she basically has nothing. It is, in fact, when you see it on stage, one really feels Violetta's pain. And
Yeah.
Alfredo left her thinking that she didn't love her anymore. But what he really didn't know throughout those days is that she continued to love him. So when he gets
Yeah.
back, it is when this duet starts. Of course, he already knows she's in pain. Of course, he already knows she's about to die. Of course, she's not willing to accept it. But just imagine that you were forced to leave the woman you loved, and now that you are coming back, you find that she's about to die. I mean, that would be that is an immense pain. It's so difficult to bear. And in the middle of that immense tragedy, because Verdi really took it on Violetta, he really was cruel on making her suffer. And remember that some people say that it has some biographic content, making reference to her Giuseppina Streponi, the somehow the love of his life. Of course, talking about Giuseppina Streponi is takes another 20 minutes, because she's a very interesting character with influence in Verdi's life. But somehow people say that he dedicated this opera to Giuseppina just to honor her for all the pain she had to suffer being with Verdi. So I think I shouldn't be explaining anymore, because now I feel it very deeply, and I will not be able to sing anything.
Right.
What would you like to add?
I would like to add that Alfredo it's probably suffering as much as Violetta because in second act he there's a misunderstanding in second act. It has to be for some reasons, but he treated her very rude in a very rude way, and that makes that they took different ways. They got apart, and now that he knows the truth, tries to approaches her again, and they have like 5 minutes to spend together. So I can't imagine what he's feeling. We thought about Violetta and how she lost everything, but finally she finds now some relief for the chance to be with the love of her life again. But what about Alfredo? She lost her, and he lost her. He treated her like crap, and now there's no way to rectify, to correct that way and be together. It has to feel terrible.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And it is very interesting that those thoughts on the role of a tenor come from a soprano because I have never thought it that way myself. I have always given so much thought on Violetta and I have never thought of Alfredo, but thanks for sharing. Now I can see it from a different perspective that I had not considered. But it is true. Now he has to be alive, keeping that memory of hers. Remember also that at the end, when she says, "Prendi queste l'immagine dei miei passati giorni." You see when she's delivering this to him, to for you to be able to remember me. How can you
Be
find?
happy. I won't be here anymore. I'll be taking care from heaven. And I bless you both. Oh God.
I personally, I don't think Alfredo would ever be happy again, keeping that
No, I
heavy
don't
load
think
on
I would
his.
kill myself if I were Alfredo.
Well, that happens in Romeo and Julieta. Remember, the two of them loving at the. Well, there are other operas where the two of them die, but basically the most famous lovers are Romeo and Juliet, which will not be part of this cycle, by the way, because the duets there are not that famous. They are great, but they are not that famous. So with that in mind, another thing, because we before we jump into the score, and this is something that is usually forgotten because I have noticed that people, especially when it is part of the whole opera, the whole representation, not when it is a duet, an extract in a concert, the soprano, this act has to be sung with a voice that really shows she's about to die. So when they sing in parallel, her voice has to be not only is written with lower notes, but also her voice needs to sound tired. And people think, if they have not paid attention to the whole opera, or if they do not know the story, they say, "Oh, poor soprano, she's already tired. She cannot sing as loud as the tenor." This is not the Libiamo Libiamo. This is not a triumphal story. She's about to die. This is the last minutes she's going to be spending with her lover. She's making an effort, as we see in detail throughout the act, but the truth is that she's not going to make it. And with that in mind, it is that from the perspective of the tenor, it has to be sung. It says dolcissimo a mezza voce. Again, you don't need to shout it. You don't say Parigi, cara. You sing it, more carefully, more like caring. Like from my perspective, it is like if the tenor wanted to embrace her with his voice.
Yeah.
It has to be softer. Parigi, cara, noi lasceremo la vita uniti, trascorreremo de corsi affani. If you notice, in particular, I like this passage because the corsia fani. Remember that you're trying to keep her, like embracing her with your voice. So when you're sharing with her, we haven't translated the title, by the way. Parigi cara means that the whole duet means that he would like to go with her to Paris. Remember that they met in Paris. The first act, in fact, happens in Paris. So as she's living away, retired outside the in a villa, he wants to. The whole duet is about portraying their life again, being happy again, and they are going to be happy in Paris. So from my perspective, and I would like to insist, of course, it is important the notes, but more important is that the tenor. is really showing that caring with his voice. Se corsi affani compensavrai. And even if you notice, well, if you're familiar with how music is written, you see that something increases here and decreases again, which Verdi is telling the tenor, do not exaggerate, do not put everything in there. Just touch that high note, but immediately decrease the volume. That's what again justifies that this part of the tenor has to be so very caring for her. La tua salute rifiorirà, sospiro e loce, tu mi sarai, tutto il futuro ne arriverà. If you notice, the complete section has flowed so smoothly, so softly that you really feel that caring for her. Parigi, cara, noi lasceremo. If you ever happen to listen to a version of two singers and the tenor is going full voice, he really didn't understand what he's singing, right? It really has to show that caring. Let's go now for the part of Violetta.
Parigi, caro, noi lasceremo le vita unite, trascorreremo decorsi affanni, compreso avrai la mia salute rifiorirà, sospiro e voce, tu mi sarai, tutto il futuro ne riderà.
That final arridera is usually somehow interrupted uh, con anima by the tenor with Parigi, cara, noi lasceremo.
De corsi affani compenso avrai, tutto il credere riderà.
La vita uniti trascorreremo.
De corsi affani compenso avrai, tutto il credere riderà.
De corsia ani
Corsi affani
compenso avrai. La tua salute rifiorirà. Let me make a pause there because we need to mention that the duet is usually not sung complete. Here comes a section that in fact, I don't think I have ever heard it complete. The whole section is usually cut. We explained that in a previous program also sometimes. At the end, we also need to consider not only that the melody may feel repetitive at some point, but let's keep in mind that Violetta has been singing for a good number of hours already. So besides that, she must show that she's tired. The soprano is actually tired. She has been singing most of the time in all the.
And let's remember that it's not the most easiest thing in the world to sing with that line and that loud. It might sound like a contradiction, Well, if you're tired, it is easier to sing so quietly. Well, it's not, because let's remember that you have to use much more air. You have to use much more your diaphragm, and you have to use that air to move your voice through. Sometimes it is easier to sing loud and yell than sing in this way. At the end of the opera, it's like kind of criminal.
Yeah, and not only remember that she has been singing for hours, but also remember that for some stage directors, they also make her sing lying on a bed or on a very uncomfortable position. So
Yeah, that's right.
that adds to the difficulty. And I also wanted to mention before we continued something that besides the melody also being very lovely, being the reason why people love this duet also, the part of the soprano with this and I don't know how to call it. How do we call it in English? How can we call that section of yours in English?
We'll have a reward for our suffering.
Yeah, but what I meant is that these short remarked notes that one may think that she's happy again, recalling maybe the first act of La Traviata, but she's not happy. She's not. Even though you may find these notes very bright, remember that she's about to die, so she doesn't have that brightness and that volume.
She doesn't know. She still has the hope that she will go to the doctor. Now that Alfredo is beside her, she thinks that she will have the strength again to recover, and she realizes that she's not recovering. Oh God.
And please don't mention that because that's one of the parts of the opera that also it also most of the times almost makes me cry. You know, when she gets up and she says that she wants to go out right after this duet, and she says
Yeah.
grandio non posso, and she says I cannot do it even if she wants it, even if Alfredo has returned and that she thought that would be enough to go back to her life. It is not. She has to face it. So when you have all that in your mind, you see how difficult it is to go through this duet when everything is falling apart, really. But let's go back to the duet. As I was telling you, it is usually omitted because they play again with this part of Parigi, cara, noi lasceremo. Sì, noi lasceremo la vita uniti trascorreremo e corsi affani compenso avrai.
Rifiorirà, rifiorirà.
Rifiorirà le corsi affani. Le corsi affani compenso avrai. Le corsi
De corso
affani
di compenso
compenso
avrai.
avrai. La tua salute si
Ah, sì,
rifiorirà. right after that is where it comes the scene that we were just sharing. The "Ah, non più a un tempio Alfredo andiamo, dal tuo ritorno grazie rendiamo." But she knows that this is, well, she's about to learn that it is actually not going to happen. But and you know what I like it when two fellow singers are singing this Parigi o cara on stage is when they finish la tua salute si rifiorirà, si rifiorirà. From my perspective, it is very important that the two voices finish at exactly the same time because it makes the duet believable. If for some reason the soprano falls short of breath, the tenor should immediately end.
Cut.
Yeah, I mean, we know that she's sick, but don't abuse. Don't keep it for longer. You know? You're in love with her, so you have to keep. I wanted to mention because I was watching recently one of the very famous performances of two of the most famous singers of the past 4 decades. And I noticed that for some reason it was the other way. The tenor fell a little short in breath, but the soprano kept going. And I told him,
No, you don't have to do that.
besides not being believable because you're the one who is about to die, it it really doesn't make sense that you are making plans together and at the end we're really not making plans together. I'm just planning on showing off my voice.
Yeah.
And I don't know personally because of the of this all this content in the words. If I had to lean towards any of these two duets, I would lean towards Parigi or Cara.
Yeah, so would I.
The only thing is that for you maybe it's not your tesitura, so but you can do it on stage, right?
I think that I can sound like a 12 years old Violetta and no one will care about.
Yeah, that could possibly be the case. But you could enjoy the first act.
Yeah, totally. Now I think that you can take this role and effort not in this technique sense when you push your instrument and your voice to the limit, but you can take care with the color and do a good work. Maybe I will be Violetta someday. Yeah.
I think that Violetta, well, of course, you know you're a soprano. So you know that Violetta is the role every soprano wants to sing because you know you will be applauded insanely at the end of the opera.
You wanna be Violetta too.
Everybody wants to be Violetta. Well, I would
Everybody
like to
wants
be
to be
Giorgio Germont. You know that I like the cruel guys, and Giorgio Germont in the second act is just a very miserable guy.
You
Yes.
hate it. If it's well played, you will hate it.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, you succeed if you are hated. If you're not hated, you were not a good Giorgio Germont. So you really have to do it.
That's
And
yeah.
maybe we could wrap up by saying that people used to say, adding to what you just mentioned, that people say that Violetta is written for three different sopranos, that you need a very light coloratura soprano in the first act, a very lyrical one in the second, and a dramatic one for the third. From my perspective, that is an exaggeration. What you need to have is a soprano with a well developed voice who is comfortable
Yeah.
with her ornaments, comfortable with her central voice, and comfortable with putting some dark or some expression for the final act. So,
Yeah, I think it has to do with your intention, with what you try to say, and probably I will never sound like Maria Callas in the drama meaning, in the color sense, but you can impress it to your voice, to your sound. Yeah.
yeah, and you know there are many famous tenors that do not like to sing Traviata because they know that all the applause will go to the soprano. So say, why invest my time when they will be only applauding her? So usually, I don't mean bad, but people know that usually when there is a traviata, la traviata is usually a very consummate soprano, and the tenor is usually not that strong, because tenors at the same level of famous of maturity of the voice usually do not accept to be the secondary role, because even though they are the couple of La Traviata, the truth is that Alfredo is always
Yeah.
secondary to her. So
It's kind of when a girl marries a king, she becomes a queen. But if a guy marries a queen, he becomes the queen's husband.
sort of, yeah. That's what it happens, yeah. So that's the case for these two duets that we wanted to share with you today. For next week, we are already preparing our content for next week, and truth is that I have not decided. So you will see, you will be able to witness now what will Katia vote for. So her vote here will decide what are the two melodies that we are bringing next week. You have to choose, Katia.
Okay.
We have the two main areas from La Boheme, of course, Si mi chiamano Mimi and Che gelida manina. That is option one. And we have, on the other hand, the hyper famous Barbero di Siviglia. And we have, of course, the introduction of Il Barbiero. Largo factotum de la città, largo. And of course, we have Rosina's aria. So, which one you choose for next program? You choose, yeah.
Oh God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Il Barbero.
Okay, we'll go for Il Barbero. Again, we will.
But I want to be Figaro.
Oh, I cannot be Rosina, so you will have to be the two of them. Yeah, I
Okay.
sound like a contralto when trying to sing Rosina. So, but let's remember that in fact Rossini wrote for sort of a dark mezzo because he was
Yeah.
in love with a woman who had a tessitura. So what can we do? He was a composer. He can do whatever he does. And we're wrapping
Yeah.
today's program. I feel weird that we are wrapping with not a melody because I got used to having some singing to wrap up. So that's why I feel weird today. I'm not sure if you, Katia, would like to sing something so we can wrap up and I don't feel weird.
Sure, but let me find my score because I was reading the scores we've
Sure.
been talking about,
What will you be sharing?
and it's it's lost. I would like to share. Oh, it already appeared. Addio del passato.
Okay, let's go for that. Thank you.
Addio